Hello and welcome to this very special pre-launch 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝘀 episode. I'll start off by introducing possibly the least exciting part of this podcast, which is Josh Excels. Hello, welcome back as always.
I see how it is. You get your old partner back, and now suddenly I'm bottom of the heap again, unwanted. But no, it's good to be here, and less than a week now until launch. I'm very excited.
And as I alluded to, or as Josh alluded to, the band is back together. We have with us on this podcast for many years, of course, JAPES. Hello, JAPES. Welcome back.
Hello, guys. Happy to be back. Just a quick reunion tour, no big deal. But this time live on video, so I can, wave at all the folks out there too.
You can wink at them, And actually, the most fascinating thing about this podcast and the reason why you haven't been on the podcast for so long is because you have moved over to EA and have been working there for what is it, like 9-10 months now, something like that, since you left the podcast pretty much. We didn't reveal it straight away because wanted you to settle in and things, but it's nice to be able to say where you are and what you're up to. So do you want to give us a bit of a rundown of in terms of what your role is, I suppose?
Yeah, so I joined like November last year, so this will be my first launch at EA, which is really exciting. My role is largely in the world of content within Ultimate Team. So I'm a PM and focus on everything that might be within the world of the live environment once the game goes live. So heavy lean towards content, certainly, but obviously an area that I have cared deeply about for many years as a player. Yeah. And now it's fun to be on the other side and, taking a lens of hey, would I have liked this? Do I think community would have liked this? And how can we, evolve that into something that, feels really, really good. So I'm super excited for 26, and I think it's going to be a really, really great year.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time to join as well in terms of the increased communication, right, that is going on with the community. I mean, it's worked out really well, in fact, that you're able to be here and talk about it because, this is a new thing for those working on Ultimate Team. I guess you're presumably excited about that kind of new approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think, there are obvious path to showing more of the cards this year, maybe than ever before, and being more intentional about how we share things. And I think the pitch notes that have just been released is another step in that direction. So, that's part of why I'm here, other than to chum it up with you guys again, but to go through, answer any questions you guys might have and talk about what's to come.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, actually, I think maybe as a nice starting point for this conversation, we've had these launch pitch notes which break down some of the extra things we might need to know about the start of the game and the approach this cycle. There's some new bits of information there for us which we'll get to. I guess it might make sense for people to go through and read those pitch notes before catching this, but also we will explain plenty of the things, I guess, that are highlights within that anyway. But I think to kind of start us off, I was wondering if you could imagine you're one of our listeners and or viewers. In fact, of course, you can watch this on video. What would you be most excited about going into 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝘀 from a content perspective?
Yeah, see, this is fun. I don't have to work too hard because I I was still fresh in that not too long ago.
Yeah,
I think that the first thing is certainly gauntlets and tournaments. I think it's just a super refreshing and exciting way to engage and play with Ultimate Team. Rivals has changed, and bounties are certainly going to be a fun addition there. Champs is getting more even potentially white knuckly. Now there's a reward at every single win along the way, but gauntlets, tournaments, events, they're net new. And I think as content has expanded over the years, there's more and more great items in the game that you wish that you had places to continue playing with and engaging with. And this opens up the avenue to do that. And I'll go back to JAPES content once upon a time where I used to have this series called Hybridism, where you could put together I would try to put together hybrid squads when links were different. And it's hey, now there's compelling ways to think about how you construct your whole club and put your best squads together through different rounds or through different requirements. So I think that's first and foremost. I'm pretty excited about Evos this year. I think we learned a lot of things in the past, few years, and Evos will continue to evolve. But it's the ultimate like kind of choose your journey in terms of how you build like specific players up or specific items and construct them. And we've made some really nice changes in there that should allow more flexibility and more incremental progress towards those. So I think that's great. I think I'm going to like loosely say campaigns as a whole. I think campaigns this year will be like really good. I mean, there's the discussion around like the power curve, but I'm really, really excited about some of what we've got in store there. And then, last probably seasonal content. And I'm sure we'll talk about like the World Tour Silver Superstars there, entirely net new, but I think how we're approaching seasons this year is just like really, really fun and kind of, is designed to tell a little bit more of a story maybe than we've been able to previously.
So just to pick up on the thing that I keep talking about when we did our How to Start podcast earlier this week, I just kept saying, tournaments and gauntlets and tournaments and gauntlets. And when we get tournaments and gauntlets, so gauntlets specifically, I think from these pitch notes was one of the things I think we got a little bit more clarity on with how they work. So from kind of your understanding, like what is your expectation of gauntlets? How often will we see them and how will we interact with them on a day-to-day or season-to-season basis?
Yeah, so you'll get them every 2 weeks for the first season. Gauntlets will be like, it's not like a one and done. Like you go and you enter them and you get one chance and that's like it. It's one of those where you get like multiple runs at the gauntlet, largely what might be on like a daily basis. And so it's like the rewards will be like associated with the level of effort. And they'll be, different based on like what you might need to achieve for a specific gauntlet. So if you need to get 4 out of 5 wins or 5 out of 5 wins, and depending on how difficult some of the objectives associated with them would be, but weekly you'll see some type of like tournament or live event. There will always be that sort of like midweek opportunity to use many of the items that you might want to use that you wouldn't feel like are maybe in your like best squad that you're using for champions to try to grind out every single win. That's not to say that like you don't want to have a lot of really great squads for Gauntlet to be able to like go out and achieve those things, but it's not just like 1-11. It's like, how are you building out your whole club for that?
Do you anticipate it making sense to sort of build around league and nation squads as those extra squads, and that those might be possible to use within the tournaments and those requirements as well? So you're kind of doubling up across them. So it's not like you're building a first, second, third team and then additionally other teams for tournaments, but it's kind of like, spreading that across a couple of teams probably.
Yeah, I think if you're really intentional about it, you can probably find ways to do, 2 birds, 1 stone type of thing. But I think that's like for those of us that have been like hardcore committed and like really, really getting after maximizing it. We will offer previews for many of these like events and gauntlets. You'll have an idea of what the requirements are ahead of time. So you can start sort of planning your squad. And so when things like Evos come about, you're like, ooh, if I'm building my, Manchester United team and you're Ben, like you might be like, I could use a whole new backline.
Probably.
Or like I could
leave 𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬 alone.
I could use an improvement to my backline. But I don't know. Ben had to get one like United reference for old time's sake. But as you think about like filling gaps for like leagues or nations, like you can do that with intentionality.
And I suppose that kind of maybe links into the World Tour stuff, because, we had World Tour in 25. It was something that definitely in the early seasons of the game, I think we had that Adama Traore in the season pass early doors. I think we had Robert Sanchez as an objective. But it never fell, at least after the first season, or at least after the first few weeks, those cards never really kind of got into people's teams. They weren't something that were used a lot. Has the addition of tournaments and gauntlets now given you a little bit more scope to get creative with those kinds of campaigns and allow you to release cards that you don't necessarily have to think about pushing the power curve and getting in champs teams, because now there are other places that people can use them?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. Dama was terrorizing me for like far too long last year, maybe at times. But it definitely it like helps us tell the story and kind of like re-emphasize that. It gives like additional squad building flexibility around how folks go out and construct squads and like where these items might fit into different squads, and so. It's certainly intentional that too, like as you continue progressing, like these might be important pieces that you might want to like build around or evo around in the future. But the goal is to give folks more ways to play and kind of like choose their journey.
And I guess an interesting point of discussion around this is we've got these sort of significant modes coming to the game in terms of Gauntlet and tournaments. We've seen, I guess, these things to an extent through live for friendlies, although, I mean, that is a different thing, but that's going, presumably, right? That's not something that's going to exist in FC26.
Yeah. Friendlies is essentially replaced by like live events, what I would call it. So it'd be a similar type of structure where you'd be entering like a league, the way they might have been called last year. So same type of idea and what would be the event system.
Yeah. And I guess that means spreading, reward value across these modes. And obviously we've got champs as well, which is changing a bit. How do you see it kind of panning out in terms of the value you're going to get from tournaments and Gauntlet compared to champs?
Yeah. I mean, champs will be the most rewarding mode. I mean, it's like the peak of ultimate team competition. The stakes are absolutely the highest. And we've made changes this year to make sure the stakes are like higher than ever. Every win is going to matter. So that'll still be, where you can get the absolute best rewards. Based on the requirements, which will, change and fluctuate through the course of the year and like level of effort and squad depth needed, like the reward level for tournaments and gauntlets will go up and down. So it's something we've sort of talked about wanting to be able to pulse like different levels of it. And there will be some that as you go, deeper into gauntlets and can be like 5 rounds, not for season 1, but can get to that level. Like that's a big commitment, and we want to recognize that commitment and that level of effort there. And so we'll make sure that the rewards are appropriately distributed through those. But I think that's one of the things that, with any new feature, we're going to like work on improving it as we go. And so we're certainly welcome to feedback on how it feels for folks as they go through their first set of tournaments and first set of gauntlets.
Yeah, and is that something sort of to be thinking about? I suppose that there are lots of new things coming, particularly around Gauntlet and tournaments, and that actually things are going to have to shift and change as you learn what people want and how people are engaging with it.
Yeah, I think the goal is like the best experience possible for players, and we want it to feel like entirely rewarding. And so if we don't get it right the first time, we would want to adjust really, really quickly. I think we feel good about where we've landed, but we recognize that like there's always going to be ways that we can improve the experience, and so we're kind of all ears listening to the community when they provide feedback.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think probably it's a good point now, because I think so many of the elements we've talked about relate to the power curve in one way or another, and I think maybe it's a way to try and bring all of those points together if we can, because it feels like it's kind of across the entire game that maybe the power curve there's been a pullback attempted in how quickly it moves. So, from a rewards perspective, we've seen from the champs rewards, like the kind of rank 1 champs rewards seem to have a lot less coins. I think it's 115,000 less coins from the first champs rewards from the last game cycle. We've got the introduction of campaign items into champs rewards, like from the off, which is, I think, a really, really good update. And then even the kind of ratings of the tradable packs that you get have been dropped a little bit. So I think at the beginning of last year, it was 1085 plus and 1084 plus, and now it's 1084 plus and 1083 plus. So in terms of balancing that then across all modes, we can expect a pullback in terms of the rewards in squad battles and rivals and kind of everywhere. Is that the expectation?
Yeah, you're definitely going to, like, in order to appropriately change the curve, we have to like bring things down kind of across the board. And we've tried to do it in like a pretty equitable way that makes sense. So like that time period where golds and your base icons and your base heroes and all of like your early campaign items, we just want to extend that time period and make it feel like you can use the items that you work hard for longer, and that they you get like a real sense of joy out of them.
Yeah. I actually want to ask you about the community reaction to the news about the power curve being slowed and maybe respond to some of that. But we'll do that just after this break. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon, and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello and welcome back after the break. So as I teased before the break, I wanted to ask about the community reaction to slowing the power curve. It's something that some people have been unsure about, feeling that maybe it could lead to the cycle being kind of boring and not being that sense of progression. And then also, I guess, other people may be saying, well, it's relative anyway, right? If we all have the same level of power, why does it matter that much? So yeah, what would you say to those 2 points?
I think the reaction has generally been one of like understanding. I mean, the feedback last year was certainly like, hey, this got like way aggressive. And so, we're listening to that feedback, we're taking it in. And I would say like the volume of content isn't like necessarily going to change. So you're still going to get lots of different opportunities to engage with your favorite players via different mechanisms, but it's just like the goal is to like slow it down a little bit so you can use those players a lot longer than you would have been previously. And so, you've seen things like Player of the Month specifically is one of the things that we decided to like take out. You'll still have a volume of content that might have been there in replace of Player of the Month, but that specifically is like a power curve related decision. So it'll return for September Player of the Month, but how we go about doing that, it's not like a content volume piece. It's just in terms of like the boosts relative and the like strength of those boosts.
So just to clarify on the Player of the Months, because in the pitch notes, I think it said that they wouldn't be in early access. Is that we're not going to get August Player of the Months at all?
Correct.
Cool.
So they'll start from September and we'll get September Player of the Months, basically. Yeah.
You got it.
Okay. Makes sense.
And I think kind of from community reaction, one of the areas that I don't think was necessarily highlighted by anybody when talking about the power curve, but has been highlighted massively and I think is an amazing change, is chemistry styles and the kind of slight reduction in the boost that they give, which I think was really necessary. I think it as Ben said, they were some of the most powerful cards in the game, were chemistry styles, and they were very undervalued. But there's been a big change to them, both in terms of the boost that they give, but also in the actual stat distribution that each chemistry style gives. Can you talk about like the changes that you've made, especially including now composure and stamina in the boosts that chemistry styles give? It's quite a big change.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this because this is obviously like power curve related as well. But generally speaking, the like way to think about it is that we started, or previously we're at like a 4-8-12 system where 12 could be the maximum. With a player on full chemistry, they could get a 12 boost to like a specific sub attribute. Now we've gone to a 3-6-9. So 9 is the biggest boost that they can get, going 6 and 3. According, what is the word I'm looking for? Respectively. That's the one. 6 and 3, respectively. Yeah. And so, part of it is like Shadow and Hunter were everywhere. And we wanted to introduce more intentional trade-offs for folks, and more decisions about how you want to build your cards and where, or your items, and where you want to kind of like fill in gaps or maximize attributes. And so the pace heavy boost will now come with like much larger trade-offs. And additionally, we've revamped a lot of the chemistry styles to offer more diversity. And so while it feels like that 369 is going to be fundamentally lower, where those are placed might be just like better when you go about looking at it. And certainly, you know, things for the first time ever, we've included boost to reactions, reactions was there before, but more boost to reactions. There's boost to composure and there's boost to stamina. So there are things that, like, you know, being in the community, and you guys know this, that you're like looking at all of these things, being like, ooh, what is this base level? If it's not there, like, I don't know about it. And we're trying to give, you know, folks more ways to be able to boost those attributes via chemistry styles. And hopefully, like, there's a better balance and more decision-making around what it is that you want.
Mm. Yeah, I think the composure and stamina being boosted for the first time is going to be quite big for certain players who just were always behind on that. And obviously combining that with Evos is going to allow you to kind of be a bit more honed in terms of the stat distribution of the players you're using, which I think is nice. But I guess also with the power curve being a bit slower, like that might mean that, you know, you are more looking at kind of rounding out a player than getting them, you know, well above what potentially the rest of the players look like. But you never know, I guess. Could always cook up something
decision,
good,
right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to go, like, if you're all pace all day, that heavy manual, and you want to go that route, then like you know, Shadow and Hunter are there for you. We've made like what I think are some really nice improvements to Catalyst as well, making it more of like a prominent like pace and passing, like more universal passing play style. And, you know, the chemistry styles with some of the new rules that are introduced, like they kind of complement each other there as well. So there's a lot of like, it's like a subtle change, but I think it'll have like a really big impact in how the game like plays for folks.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was saying they're one of the most powerful items in the game, chemistry styles, and yet they didn't have that huge amount of value, and they are being reduced slightly in terms of their power, but actually still a +9 on any stat is a big deal, and it will continue to be like that to an extent.
Certainly a big deal, but if you are going for like a +9 in like a specific stat, you're going to have to be really intentional about it, and it's going to come with like appropriate trade-offs. And I think that's like when chemistry styles can shine. And so it's still important to get your team on full chemistry to get that, you know, +9, +6 in the specific areas, because it makes a noticeable difference. You're just going to have to decide like where you really want to put that.
I think we should probably move on. Josh, maybe you've got a question, because I could talk about chemistry styles for probably the entire episode. So, but maybe we'll do one on it at some point.
I mean, like, I will just kind of highlight, I think the thing with those pace chemistry styles, it's worth really looking at where the big boosts go outside of pace and what specific stats are being boosted, because there is a trade-off. It's not just lip service. I kind of wanted to talk about the season pass players, because we've got the first look at those in these pitch notes. And I think, firstly, obviously, there's a big theme with England being the theme, and that's going to be around, obviously, the World Cup in '66. It feels like all of the seasons are going to be relating to the international tournament coming up next summer, which I think is a really good lead-in. But one of the things I kind of wanted to point out from a kind of power curve perspective is that even in the premium pass, the highest rated card is 86 rated. And we talked about that Adama earlier on, who was in the first season pass in 25 that wasn't paid, and he was 88 rated. So I think if people maybe have questions over what the pullback is going to look like, that's a pretty good idea of the kind of slowing of the power curve of what we're going to get early doors, about having a breadth of players rather than a kind of really fast power curve that increases quickly. I think the area of the power curve that I'm most worried about in some respects is evolutions. And, you know, when we spoke to Jamie, he said that everything was going to be pulled down with a power curve, but Evo's just that little bit more. Does that allow you, though, an opportunity to give kind of, it feels like little and often is what Evos are kind of transitioning into. And it felt like that's what we moved to at the end of 25 with stuff from the season pass, like with individual playstyles and playstyle pluses and positions. but now with repeatable Evos as well, giving kind of small stat boosts that you can do regularly, do you see Evos as more something where it is a lot more construction based rather than just one evolution will give you this player? It's got to be something that rewards you if you're a bit more, I don't know, specific with what it is that you want. Intentional, that's the word I was going for.
100%. I think one of the pieces of feedback was like, a lot of these Evo players look the same. And like, that was kind of like the nature of the bigger, like full scale boosts. One of the goals here is like, hey, Evos is like the ultimate expression of like trying to choose your journey. And I highlighted it, kind of off the top as one of the things that I'm excited for, because I am a very committed Evo fan, as you both will well know. And so how I think about like building a player and like the specific attributes, having more flexibility to have a little here and a little there, but more often to be able to do that. So I feel like I'm consistently progressing the player, even though it's in potentially smaller increments. I think it's going to be like a net win. And then you pair that with some of the new additions of like Gauntlet and tournaments, and how you think about adding incremental improvements to a variety of evolution players, not just like, hey, does this player make my starting 11 via this like big wholesale boost? It's like, I can start really working and improving my like past and present side, or my like one nation side. And so it gives, flexibility for if you want to build a box to box like CM that had like that was more of an attacking midfielder, it had kind of like a weak defensive stat. Well, now you can start, slowly working towards building that up.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And yeah, it fits well with having multiple squads being more of a thing in FC26, right? Because you kind of have teams where you can use those players, but not feel like you're handicapping yourself, I suppose, by doing that. So that's good. Was there anything else on the topic of evolutions you wanted to add, Josh, before we move on from that?
I think maybe the only thing is just the highlight of because silver stars, as we would call it, is kind of back to some extent. But the silver superstars can go into some evolutions, but would then lose their eligibility for the events that are going to be around kind of silver cards and specifically the silver superstars. Do you think there will be a point where there is a decision to make where people will upgrade their silver superstars, or is the idea that the rewards for keeping a silver squad, a really good silver squad throughout the whole year, is going to be worthwhile if you can kind of keep that going all the way to, I don't know, the World Cup next year?
Maybe slight interjection before some people may not be aware of these silver icons, JAPES, so perhaps a little
so there could be icons and heroes.
Let me tell you about World Tour silver superstars. So England 66 is the theme for season 1, and so icons and heroes that participated in that tournament will receive like really unique World Tour silver superstar silver items that are rated 74 or lower. They have a unique rarity associated with them. And actually, Josh, that rarity will be clamped out of Evos for season 1. We saw multiple times through like different Evo paths that we put in the game in 25 that it can be a really frustrating experience for fans if they accidentally end up with an item that they want to use elsewhere in an Evo that clamps them out of some other part of their journey. So we're going to try for season 1 to just like take that off the table. And part of it is because we want fans to know that like it's worthwhile to collect these pieces. They have unique illustrations associated with them. We're trying to make them, look and feel different so that you want to utilize them for the silver events. Now there's undoubtedly going to be like some case of, hey, I want to try to like Evo this item one way or another. Like we know that that's likely going to happen. Hopefully the goal is that you don't quite want that to be the case because it's compelling enough. And frankly, it's super, super fun. So we're giving folks access to some of the biggest names in the game in kind of like a unique way in a nostalgic piece around silver, like what was silver stars. that has been like a requested piece. So they're, how you build around your World Tour silver superstars with complementing them with silver items or filling them out with more silver superstars as the cycle progresses is going to be up to you.
One kind of concern I have thinking back to silver stars before is that often the players that were added that were like special silver items were like so far ahead of the other silver players that it almost became a bit of a joke. Like the power differential in that was probably the biggest anywhere in the game. Do you think you're going to make those sort of silver icons and things obviously feel good, but not so far ahead that the other silvers can't compete against them?
100%. They'll be way more in line. They'll certainly be like towards the top of what you would expect, but the goal is the boosts that they, or the silver items that they receive, will like try to coincide with their performance in the tournament. So folks that are players that had really, really big tournaments and big impacts will likely be towards the top, and ones that like played a role but maybe were a supporting actor will not have like as high of a rating associated with it. So you'll still be able to fill it out, but this is part of the overall like kind of storytelling piece that I think we feel there's like a responsibility to kind of do, and this is a way that we can try to bring that to life a little bit.
I just have one question remaining on the silver superstars, which is just a line that I might be reading too much into, where when you say balances, each item will be created at silver level with ratings that reflect tournament performance on an alternate progression path. Is that kind of outside of what would be like a team of the week upgrade type progression path?
Yeah, this means that there's like some flexibility to how we think about like where we or like how we build those items to reflect that performance in the tournament, and two, that like they're meant to stay silvers. So like 74 is kind of like where the curve goes. So they're just like in line with that power curve and not going to go like wild and out of control. But we'll also, like, as the cycle progresses, we still want to make sure that you feel like you're progressing and improving. So there will be, changes as we go through the seasons.
And actually, while we talk about sort of early campaigns and things along those lines, one of the things we've seen announced here is Cornerstones as being one of the early campaigns or promotions. And it mentions Cornerstones providing permanent upgrades. Does this just mean they're kind of a normal promo item? And I guess it's worth kind of highlighting what is interesting about these, because actually they aren't just a standard campaign in many ways, which is surprising actually from my perspective for the first campaign of the new game, because typically that's just quite generic sometimes, or it's a live promo, I guess.
Yeah, and I think this is part of this is like the storytelling piece. Historically there have been campaigns like Ones to Watch that you're thinking about, like the new signings. I think when you think about starting your Ultimate Team journey, the start of FC 26, like as like players and fans, we're kind of like, who are we going to build around? Who are going to be like the primary players that I go out and chase and incorporate into my squad? And clubs in real life and real football do the same thing when they look at their big like long-term signings or their like dependable leaders that have been there. And you look at that and you say like, yeah, that's a cornerstone for my season ahead. And we wanted to be able to reflect that in a campaign. And so we're bringing Cornerstones to life. It's a permanent, will be a permanent upgrade. But the interesting part is the +2 club chemistry link. So as you're thinking about incorporating players from your favorite club in early, we're trying to give you like more ways to do that. And I think it pairs really, really nicely with things like Gauntlet. So as you're trying to compete in that first Gauntlet, we're giving you like a little bit of an easier path or a more straightforward path to getting players in that you want to get in.
Do you have anything to add on this particular topic, Josh, or should we move on to talking about champs?
Yeah, let's talk about champs.
Okay, let's do that. But after a break. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, I said we'd talk about champs, but we are going to talk about rivals a little bit first, just before we get into it, because that's how it works, of course. Do rivals, then champs. So my question is, it looks like the emphasis has kind of moved slightly away from rivals this cycle, JAPES, in terms of a reduction in points, and there's now streaks that add to your points total and things like that. Do you want to just quickly explain what's going on there?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it's like a shift in focus. It's more of an acknowledgement that like we're introducing other ways to play, and like that's a decision on your time and how you choose about going to play. So rivals will have bounties now this year, which is I think really really exciting. They can be a variety of reward points, season points, ladder skips, packs, picks, like all sorts of stuff. Streaks now are different. They'll accelerate your division progress, but also progress you towards rewards at the same time. So, if you're on fire, you can like really let it rip. But there's a conflict, or there's not like a conflict, but there's like a decision to be made on like how you want to go about grinding it. And bounties are great because for those folks that do want to like grind it, there's a consistent reason to kind of keep doing that. So, I think it's a really, really great change. And I think folks are going to be like, it's going to feel good because I think, one of the pieces certainly is as you're, flying up the ladder, you didn't feel like you were always making progress towards your rewards. And we've worked to kind of remedy that.
So to kind of put some numbers around it, the points total has dropped from 35 to 30. You're going to get double the points if you're on a streak when you're in Rivals. And so the estimation is that you'll spend about 5 fewer games trying to get your Rivals points for the week. You've also got added into that bounties. And for me, I think this is one of the more exciting additions to kind of make that grinding Rivals a little bit more interesting. One of the questions I had as a takeaway when reading it is that the bounties would change, the rewards would change across divisions. Can you kind of give a little bit more information on that, or is that something that's still being tweaked?
I think the easiest way to think about it is like it might be getting like as it gets harder, like we want to make sure that you feel like the effort is appropriate, but like rewards, I listed a variety of things that they could be. People place value in all sorts of different things. So, certain players might prefer one thing to another. And there's like an element of like bounties are kind of fun. There's like an element of randomness to it. And so, it's something we're obviously going to be monitoring because it's a new addition and, is an area that we're, again, welcoming feedback on.
And then in terms of relegation, it seems like there's more relegation going on potentially, but there are also checkpoints which mean you don't necessarily always get relegated if you need to lose multiple games right before you go down the divisions and things like that. So there's a few tweaks in terms of how it actually functions.
Yeah, I would encourage folks to like you can go through, read the pitch notes certainly after this. I think it does like a really nice job explaining, and I think the idea here is like it's just reduce friction where possible. It's like kind of the theme with it. And we recognize that Rivals had some friction too. And we think some of these changes are going to really help do that.
Yeah. And I mean, actually talking about this structure, I think we've probably done enough in terms of Rivals and we can move on to champs. How does it work in terms of people getting into the two different champs? Because you've got champs as we know it, big boy champs maybe, and then we've got the
champs is fine, man.
I like that. And we've got champs challengers, which I've been calling baby champs. How do you get into each of those, and how do we know that people won't be trying to go into baby champs to noob stomp, as people call it?
I would recommend against it. Like if you're a good enough, committed enough player, challengers, which you were referring to as baby champs, but we'll call challengers, is a max 5 matches. And the 5 match reward for challengers is like, maybe you're better off getting 1 or 2 wins in champs. And so it's like not a guarantee necessarily to win all 5 of those matches, and the champs rewards for even just winning a few, and which you have to remember based on like the way qualification changes now. You can earn champs qualification points starting Division 7, but Division 6 and up, you're good to go. And so the pool of players that are getting in is like expanding because you're not playing the champs playoffs anymore. And so there's, in my mind, if you're a champions player, there's really no reason to go down to challengers, because the rewards that you're going to get and what is the most rewarding mode that we have in champions are just far more worthwhile.
And also it's less games, right? So it's never going to be as rewarding, and you're missing out on the potential to play more games, I guess, by going into bigger champs.
Yeah, more games, like in like way more upside, just way more upside, because you know, at each point in champs now, that at each win, like things are getting better. So there's like way more of a reason than there's been previously to make sure that each match matters, because it's the, you know, champs is like the lean in, like white knuckle mode that we have, where you're like, this is going to change your like ultimate team, maybe the most. Now that's just from like a rewards like kind of power and where it's put in across modes.
And what are the 15 win rewards like? I actually they're in the pitch note, right? So people can check those out. Is that what you've been eyeing up, Japes, for this cycle? Do you think you still got it?
I don't know if I quite have it the way I used to have it. And certainly, you know, my focus is like how I think about, you know, the game has changed and expanded. But you know, the time that I devote will still, like, I'll definitely be competing. I definitely like testing myself. And like, would I love to get a rank 1? 100%. If I do it, will I drop the tactics? Likelihood's still probably high. But I have to be able to get that rank 1 first.
It'll definitely be tweeting about it anyway.
For sure.
Yeah, okay, and it'd be cool to see how the champs, presumably the champs rewards will obviously change over time as well. These aren't something that's you know, static. And interestingly, in terms of, so just a quick tangent, in terms of rewards changing over time, for the first time, draft rewards are going to change over the course of the cycle, which is huge for those people who are still playing draft. And also, I mean, they're going to be refreshed, right, for this cycle. So that's great news, I think, for many people.
Yeah. I mean, it's big. The draft hasn't seen many changes over the years, and part of it is like it can be tough to win a draft, and the randomness of feeling like you go 4 for 4 is like maybe not great. And how you think about investing your time there is certainly, you know, with Ultimate Edition, you've got your FC point grants associated with that, and if you want to put those towards draft, as many, you know, committed and top players do early on, like you want to feel like it's like actually going to be a place that you want to do that. So they're going to get updated as, you know, the player pool gets updated as well. And, you know, it's a step I think that we're excited about, because it's needed a little bit of TLC.
Yeah, that's good. And then is there anything else, Josh, you wanted to ask around champs before we move on from that?
I mean, probably not. I like, is there a side of you that worries maybe that with kind of gauntlets and tournaments and live events, and actually with bounties in rivals, that maybe champs will have less people playing it this year? Or do you feel like because there's an extra reward for every win, because the rewards are the best there, do you think it will go back to being what it should have always been, which was the most competitive games you play? Because I feel like, especially in the last kind of year or two, some of the games there have probably been the easiest you would play. And I think maybe with live events that could change. Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly important, right? Champs is like an anchor for how like we think about like engagement, and how, you know, frankly, players like plan their squads and think about improvements. And so that's like the big starting 11 that you want to be able to like appropriately challenge yourself. And certainly if you're a good player, there at times have been, you know, champs could be maybe easy from the start, but I would, you know, maybe argue that it's like never easy at the end as you kind of like progress along the path. And so it should be the ultimate test with like the top end rewards.
And actually, talking about, you know, positive improvements around making like rivals have less friction, I guess you mentioned, and also, you know, I guess incentivizing people to play those competitive modes. Something that's always frustrated people has been draw quits, and we have more information about that. And I think we already knew, but it's worth highlighting. And the big change that's been made is that to get granted that win for someone quitting on a draw, that opponent no longer has to quit via the menus. So now if someone turns off their console, pulls out the Ethernet cable, those sorts of things, that will grant a win to the person who had that happen against them. But there are still some caveats around that. But it was also interesting, I think, for the first time, potentially, we saw sort of a rough reason given for why this is something that's a little tricky to kind of make work or implement, or that EA needs to be careful about it.
Yeah, it's not a straightforward challenge, and there are varying opinions about like what is best. And so in order to, the way it functions kind of this year, in order to get the win, one of the conditions has to be true, is like 45 minutes will have had to pass, or the player that's disconnecting will have had to concede a penalty kick, or they will have had to have received a red card. So like big moments that could happen still early in matches where it feels like the person quitting out might not be enthused about like where the direction of the match is going. The 45 minutes is the one that we're definitely going to monitor. And, we've got to see it out in the wild. We'll gather data on it, and we'll certainly gather feedback from the community as well. But this has been something that the community has asked for years. And it's another step, I think, in the right direction.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I would pick up on your point, Ben. I do think it's interesting for the first time that it said, exploits can be unintentionally introduced. And I think as much as draw quits are frustrating, I think a fix that would introduce an exploit for kind of getting the win when, if somebody quit earlier in a game at a draw is probably more of a negative long term. So I think as, the whole theme around the beginning of 26 has been community interaction, feedback, engagement. I mean, we got pitch notes for the beta changes, like for the main game, which I don't think we've ever had before. So if that's the level of feedback and the level of interaction that's being given, I think if 45 minutes does turn out to be too long, which would be my feeling, then, hopefully we can see that reduced moving forward. Obviously, I think it's more difficult when it's not exactly kind of half time. That's the cutoff point to nail that.
Players can you'll only benefit from it like up to 5 times a day. So there are like some kind of guardrails in place already, but it's something that we're definitely going to be keeping a close eye on.
I think the only other change on that front as well is in Rush, where if you're somebody who quits out of a Rush match before the end too many times, you'll end up getting a delay before you can kind of lobby up again to go back into Rush, which should encourage people to actually keep playing, no matter how frustrating they are to play with.
Do we want them to be playing? I don't know.
Just pass me the ball.
So yeah, in terms of what we maybe finish up talking about, Josh's favorite thing is tournaments and gauntlets, and he sent me a little message saying, "Can we talk about it a bit more?" He wants to squeeze in a little bit of extra tournament and gauntlet chat at the end. So yeah, what did you want to go for, Josh?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things maybe to kind of pick up on. First thing I would say is like, thank you for the advanced warning on a few bits. So like telling us that we're going to get an England only tournament right at the end of the season. So kind of build your team up for that. The same with the silver event as well. It kind of, I think it allows people to manage their clubs better when you have that advanced knowledge of what's coming. In terms of questions, there's you talk about the difference between a battle kind of tournament and a more casual tournament. What kind of guardrails do you have to direct tournaments down one route or another there?
Yeah, there's, I think the easiest way to think about it, we talk about the early access tournaments and the daily knockout. And in order to, you participate in the daily knockout, and then you can qualify for the, finale tournament, which is a one-time entry, which is gonna be more of a battle. So it's really thinking about are the stakes higher, and how friendly are the requirements, and how many attempts that you're gonna have there, because we don't want everything to be highly competitive, white knuckly all the time. You have to give room for folks to just enjoy playing with their squads and get another attempt and get in there and have fun with it. And so I have super nostalgic memories for daily knockouts. and running them with like different squads and different challenge. So we're eager to see how fans engage with it.
Yeah, and it's probably worth, we've been kind of talking about rivals, but it's probably worth talking about the matchmaking difference as well in friendlies, that there's two different ways you can have matchmaking in friendlies, kind of more open, singular tournament specific, but also then a kind of wider live event matchmaking, and that will change tournament to tournament, which should hopefully make some of them a little more casual as well if they're completely open, especially for some of the more skilled players. You did say tournaments won't appear weekly, but I think when you're reading, it's the first thing you read. But later on in the pitch notes, it's probably worth highlighting that you say we will get live events weekly. So that's either a tournament, a gauntlet, or a special event, which is kind of more of the league basis where you have X number of games to play.
Totally. There's always like a complementary piece to the rivals like champs experience. And, we've got improvements to draft. And in terms of the rewards there, you have these different pieces. So, when you think about how you want to spend your time or engage with Ultimate Team, you have a variety of different options. And we certainly, we're cognizant of giving, you talked about the previews for the events and the tournaments before, and it's like, previously when stuff might get like it just gets announced, like it has like market implications to it as well. So this is giving people more time to plan for it as they think about SBCs, like crafting different things, like what's worth it, what's not worth it, which objectives do I want to go after, and where do I want to grind.
The last thing I would say on tournaments, which I'm absolutely sure, that is being talked about loads, is just a screenshot from the early access elimination tournament where there is what looks like the reward on the screen, which is a 3 common gold players pack. But it's, again, I think it's just worth highlighting, that's actually just one of the many objectives you can compete by playing in that tournament, and isn't the reward for like playing or even winning the tournament. If you look, it just says play 1. So again, I just kind of want to get out ahead of something that I think stuck out a little bit when I first read the pitch notes.
Totally. There's you'll be able to look through like the objectives when it comes to like the events, the tournaments, the gauntlet, as far as like what you might want to do or what you need to achieve to hit different thresholds of rewards. So, you'll be able to like be intentional, but like, yes, to the screenshot, more rewarding than just that.
Cool. Yeah, you'd hope so, because that would be a very...
Ben, we are slowing down the power curve, but not quite by that much.
Whenever anything happens now, just they're slowing down the power.
Yeah, I can't wait for base gold packs to be 1,000 FC points, and suddenly we're no one's got anything at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, and actually, that's a question a lot of people have had, is fine, you're slowing down the power curve, but will that be reflected in the store? Because obviously that's going to impact the way the power curve goes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do our best to make sure all of the different kind of like systems within Ultimate Team line up appropriately, and there's not too much power given out one way or the other. So that'll also be reflected there.
And then in terms of the other thing that I wanted to ask before we ended, it mentions heroes arriving in season 2. Is that all heroes, or are there going to be new heroes?
Yeah, there will still be like heroes off the bat, but there will be some new additions arriving further down the road
that we don't know about.
Well, there was the Bayern hero vote that went through.
There you go.
Claudio Pizarro, please.
I have lots of opinions about like who I'm hoping for. But
is this a coincidence?
I'm just excited that it's going to be a Bayern hero.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a JAPES scheme if ever I saw one.
Yeah, the marketing folks have become my new best friends.
Nice. Well, yeah, we'll look out for that when it comes. I think we're pretty much done in terms of covering the pitch notes thing. I mean, I know we managed to slightly bully Jamie into saying he'd come back. I mean, I don't think we had to do much. He was quite keen to come back, and maybe JAPES we'll be able to have you back in FC 26 at some point. Before we did go though, I did want to ask, I imagine you've had a chance to get hands-on with FC 26 gameplay, as I've done briefly myself. You want to give a little tip, a little pointer to people about gameplay?
Um, gosh. Well, let me first say, like, I'm quite enjoying it.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's good.
I'm pretty excited about it. I will say the like biggest piece is there's like a nostalgic element for me. I have been very much enjoying my time with the 352, which is like I think there have been role changes, and like formationally there's going to be more variance than there has been before. More formations like feel good, feel like a lot like improved and better and viable. But I have a real soft spot for the 352, and I have been seeing quite a bit of success with it early. So maybe something to try.
Box Crasher 352. I can see it now. Yeah, looking forward to that. And yeah, I mean, Josh, unless you've got anything else to add, I think we're ready to wrap up.
Yeah, like, I mean, maybe just a nod to some of the things that were talked about further in the cycle. The spooky favorites returning. I wonder what that could be. I'm excited for that. And then even kind of, Festival of Football's been leaked, 9 months in advance, which I'm very excited about. That's going to be the name of is it the 8th season? So yeah, I mean, like, I really like how much has been put into kind of the full year, as it were, of content. I don't think it's maybe something that people appreciate enough, is how much forward planning goes in. And I'm sure there's plenty of things you're quite excited about further down the line that we're not allowed to know about yet.
Yeah, my lips will say sealed from that point. But to your point, there's a lot of like really like smart and wonderful people that put a lot of like thought and care into these things, which I think, having been like in the community side before, it's easy to like just take a look at like the corporate entity of like what it is. And now being on the inside, it's like really, I think one of the things that I'm like most excited about is how many people like genuinely care about the community. And certainly that's been something that, I came in with a goal of, trying to impact, because the community has given me a lot over the years. And I wanted to have like the opportunity to be able to have like a massive impact on that. And so doing that from inside the walls has given me a unique opportunity there. And the content, there's a lot of new pieces, I think, this year that'll be really fun. And I think we're really trying to use content to tell like a really, really great story. So I'm excited for the cycle ahead, and certainly will welcome the opportunity to come back and chat with you guys. Although I didn't get an opportunity to do like a clap like we used to at the start. I felt real out of rhythm. I didn't get to pull up Audacity, and now I've got this new video recording format. So
yeah, it's all changed.
It's all changed, Ben. And there's all of these different. Everything's new and different.
I mean,
but
it's
great.
You got away with not seeing my face so much, so that was the good time. And actually, also, it's funny you mentioned the clap thing. Everyone who comes on the podcast since we've gone to video has mentioned the fact, why don't we get to clap anymore? Clearly, that was one of everyone's favorite parts of being on the podcast. Well, on that, we can say finally goodbye again. But hopefully not for so long this time, to Japes. It's been great to have you back on the podcast, and yeah, excited to see what you end up cooking up in FC 26.
Thanks, guys.
It's been great. And finally as well, thank you very much to Josh for joining us on this one.
It's just been so long since I've heard Japes' quick exits before, just the 2-word goodbyes.
I gave that some thought too. I was like, I'm going to hit him with a quick one.
I can see your face. You were like, I'm ready to do him over again. It's been too long. But no, yeah, it's been great. And yeah, thank you very much to all you listeners and viewers, of course, tuning in to this podcast. It has been good to have you along. Do subscribe via the various different podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, also on YouTube. Drop a comment. We read all the comments, we work them in, and also leave a like on YouTube. If you'd like an extra podcast every single week, then you can become a supporter, get double the podcast episodes, including that supporter exclusive each week. You can do that just by searching Support for Weekly. Head over to Patreon, really quick and easy to sign up, and it's just £3 a month to do that. There's also the Discord for Gold and Icon supporters. It's a great place to be, especially at the start of the cycle, because everything moves so fast. You can keep up to date with what's going on. So yeah, there's a link in the description of all the supporter episodes, how to join that if you are a Gold or icon supporter. But a huge thank you to all those icons, well, not just icons, to all those supporters supporting the podcast and keeping it going, but also to those icon patrons. Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Brent P, Ralph, Josh R, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, 𝘵𝘀𝘀𝘁, Make B, Michael H, Andrew P, Arian B, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Alan G, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Dan W, Waterman, Also Ran, and Juicy. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.